My sister insisted on having a destination wedding, and my parents forced me to sacrifice my college savings to help fund it, claiming I was being selfish for not prioritizing my sister's happiness. I, an 18-year-old female, always thought my life was relatively normal. Nothing extraordinary, just the usual ups and downs. But the last few months, absolute chaos. All thanks to my golden child sister Kim, a 22-year-old female, and her obsession with hosting the most extravagant, picture-perfect wedding imaginable. Growing up, Kim was undeniably the favorite. My parents, Patrick, a 56-year-old male, and Joanna, a 55-year-old female, treated her like she could do no wrong. If she wanted something, she got it, no questions asked. Meanwhile, I was always last in line. I had learned to accept that over the years, but this wedding situation, it took everything to an entirely new level of insanity. Kim had been dating her fiancé Sean, a 22-year-old male, for all of 2 months before they decided they were soulmates. 2 months. And suddenly, the whole world had to bend over backward to make their fairy tale wedding a reality. Kim's dream was to have a massive, lavish wedding at a luxury resort, complete with an oceanfront ceremony, designer decorations, and a guest list filled with people she barely knew but wanted to impress. The problem? It was absurdly expensive, far beyond what any reasonable person could afford, especially my parents, who were already struggling with their finances. I assumed I would be attending the wedding just like any other sister, but I was wrong. I was not a guest. I was a financial resource. My parents did not even hesitate when Kim started making her outrageous demands. They immediately supported her vision, even though they had no way of paying for it. And when the costs started spiraling out of control, they turned to me. I still remember the conversation. They sat me down at the kitchen table, all serious, like they were about to tell me something tragic. Instead, they told me I needed to contribute my college savings to help cover the wedding expenses. They framed it like a duty, like it was just expected of me as a member of the family. They said things like, "You are part of this family and we all have to support each other, and Kim would do the same for you." Which, let us be real, was a complete joke. Kim had never sacrificed a single thing for anyone in her life. I was furious. That money was not just some extra cash lying around, it was my future. It was money that our grandfather had specifically left for my education. He had left Kim money too, but she had blown through it years ago, spending it on luxury handbags, expensive vacations, and whatever else she felt like indulging in. But none of that mattered because, in my parents' eyes, Kim's happiness was the top priority. They did not just ask me to help, they guilt-tripped me relentlessly. I was selfish, I was ungrateful, I was a bad sister for not wanting to contribute to the most important day of Kim's life. They made it sound like I was the villain for even hesitating. After days of emotional exhaustion, I caved. I reluctantly transferred $10,000 from my college fund, my stomach in knots the entire time. The days leading up to the wedding were tense. I was still simmering with resentment, but I told myself to make the best of it. At the very least, I would get to attend the wedding and see what I had unwillingly paid for, right? Wrong. 4 days before everyone was supposed to fly out, Kim pulled me aside. I could tell by the smug look on her face that something was coming, but I was not prepared for what she dropped on me. "I do not think you should come to the wedding," she said, her tone so casual it made my head spin. "It would not be a good look for the family." I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. "What does that even mean?" I asked, my voice tight. She sighed dramatically, like I was the one being unreasonable. This is a very exclusive event, and I do not want any negativity. You are still upset about the money, and I just feel like it would bring down the mood." I was speechless. After everything, after giving up $10,000, after dealing with my parents' constant guilt trips, I was not even allowed to attend? It felt like a slap in the face. No, scratch that. It felt like someone had ripped my heart out, stomped on it, and then acted like I was the one overreacting. The worst part? My parents did not even argue. They just packed their bags and left for the airport without me, like my existence was an afterthought. I watched them go, my stomach twisting with a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. They had taken my money and then discarded me like I was nothing. At first, I was devastated. But the more I sat with it, the more the anger hardened into something else: clarity. This was not just about the wedding, this was my entire life. I had spent years being the afterthought, the one who always had to sacrifice so Kim could shine. But not this time. I picked up my phone, called my bank, and requested a chargeback on the $10,000 I had transferred. I did not care about the fallout. I was done letting them walk all over me. Within a few days, the money was back in my account. It was a small victory, but to me, it felt enormous. For the first time in my life, I had taken control of something. I knew my parents and Kim would be furious when they found out, but I was ready for whatever drama came next. What I was not ready for, however, was what happened next. With my family out of the country, the house was eerily quiet, until, out of nowhere, an unexpected guest showed up at my front door. It was Kim's new husband's ex-girlfriend. I had never met her before, but she introduced herself like we were old friends and immediately started unloading her baggage. Apparently, she and Sean had a complicated history and had been in contact right before the wedding. She had flown out hoping to rekindle things, only to realize she had been completely replaced. Now, with nowhere else to go, she showed up at my doorstep like it was the most natural thing in the world. I should have told her to leave. I should have shut the door in her face. But after everything I had just been through, I was too exhausted to care. So I let her in. Over the next few days, I slowly pieced together the whole messy situation. She and Sean had been on and off for years, and she had genuinely thought they were going to work things out, right up until she saw the wedding announcement. She had flown to the destination, hoping for some last-minute reconciliation, only to get ghosted. She was heartbroken, humiliated, and now had nowhere to go. I did not know what to do with this information, but I knew one thing for sure: this was not going to end well. When my family finally returned from the wedding, they looked exhausted and miserable. Kim, who had spent months acting like this was going to be the most magical experience of her life, was in an absolutely foul mood. Something had gone horribly wrong, and I had a feeling I was about to find out exactly what. Update 1. Hi everyone, it has been about 4 months since I made the original post, and I figured this would be a good time for an update. A lot has happened since then, and honestly, it has been exhausting to watch unfold. After the chaos of the wedding settled down, well, as much as it ever could, my parents eventually stopped trying to guilt trip me about the money. But just when I thought things might calm down, I started noticing that Kim's situation was getting worse. And I mean significantly worse. At first, it was little things. Complaints about Sean not helping her enough around the house, about how he was not as attentive as she thought a husband should be. He was working a full-time 9-to-5 job, trying to keep up with their bills, but the financial strain from the wedding was suffocating them. Instead of acknowledging the problem and trying to come up with a solution, Kim lashed out, convinced that Sean should be her emotional support system while he was drowning in stress. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. The financial situation spiraled completely out of control. Kim was still reeling from my chargeback, which left her scrambling to cover the wedding expenses. Her credit cards were maxed out within weeks, and soon the calls from collection agencies started rolling in. It was not just a little debt. She had buried herself in financial ruin. Instead of taking a step back and reassessing her lifestyle, she panicked and started making reckless, impulsive decisions to try to fix everything overnight. Spoiler alert, it did not work. She started picking up random side gigs, but instead of putting that money toward her debts, she found ways to dig herself even deeper. Then came the dinner party. At some point, Kim decided that the best way to prove to everyone that she was fine, that she still had control over her life, was to throw a grand celebration dinner. She invited a bunch of people, acting as though this was her way of giving back to those who had supported her. In reality, it was just another attempt to maintain the illusion that she was still the same person, still living her picture-perfect life. Of course, once she started inviting people, the cost of food and drinks skyrocketed, but instead of adjusting her plans, she doubled down. She hired catering. She bought premium liquor. She wanted everything to be over the top. And then the bill arrived. Kim realized too late that she could not afford any of it. She had no money left, no available credit, nothing. So in a moment of absolute desperation, she called my parents and begged for help. For the first time in his life, my father was furious. And I mean absolutely livid. He could not understand how Kim, after receiving so much financial support already, could be this irresponsible. He called her out on her reckless spending, her lack of accountability, and her refusal to wake up to reality. My mother, of course, tried to smooth things over, but even she was visibly drained by the endless cycle of enabling Kim's delusions. And then, to make everything worse, Kim started losing the one thing she valued most: her friendships. Sarah, one of her closest friends, finally had enough and confronted her about everything. She told Kim bluntly that she needed to stop pretending, stop acting like a victim, and actually start taking responsibility for the mess she had created. Instead of listening, Kim completely lost it. She accused Sarah of being unsupportive, jealous, and toxic. Their argument exploded into an all-out social media war, with Kim posting vague, dramatic stories about fake friends and people who cannot stand to see others shine. Sarah, not one to back down, responded with receipts. She called Kim out publicly, exposing the reality of her situation. It was humiliating to witness, and the drama only made things worse for Kim. But if you think that was the breaking point, you would be wrong. Somewhere along the way, Kim convinced herself that what she really needed was to become an influencer, that this would be her ticket out of the mess. She started using her wedding as the foundation for her online brand, posting endless content about her journey, her glow-up, and her luxurious lifestyle. In reality, her content was mostly just her spending what little money she had left on ridiculous diet fads, expensive self-care products, and completely unnecessary shopping hauls. She thought this would be the thing that magically fixed her life. It was not. At first, she got some engagement, mostly from people who already followed her. But as time passed, the comments started shifting. People saw through it. They called her out on her extravagant spending while drowning in debt. They questioned why she was pushing luxury brands when she could barely afford rent. Instead of reflecting, Kim doubled down. She began blocking anyone who questioned her lifestyle, turning her page into an echo chamber of forced positivity and denial. Then, in another desperate attempt to regain control, Kim joined a local community group focused on wedding planning and budgeting. You would think this would be good for her, right? A chance to get advice and finally take financial responsibility? Nope. Instead, she treated it as a stage to brag about her perfect wedding, completely ignoring the group's focus on affordable and practical wedding planning. People got frustrated. Words were exchanged. Eventually, Kim stormed out of a meeting claiming that everyone was just jealous of her. The group blacklisted her. Another social circle? Gone. Meanwhile, I had started college. I was able to get scholarships and take out a few loans, which meant I could finally get some distance from this mess. I tried to stay out of the drama, but every time I talked to my parents, they would give me updates on Kim. And the updates were never good. My mother even suggested that now that I was back on track with school, I could help Kim out financially. I shut that idea down immediately. There was no way I was letting myself get sucked back into this disaster. Kim's life had become an absolute train wreck. The community group that could have been a lifeline had turned against her. Her social media following had dwindled to nothing. The friends who once defended her had finally walked away, realizing that the person they had known was gone, replaced by someone who was drowning in denial and fake lavishness. And then came the biggest shift of all. Sean left. He had enough. He packed his things and moved in with a couple of friends. He could not deal with the financial disaster Kim had created, the endless fights, or the unrealistic expectations she placed on him. And honestly, it was fair. He had been dragged down long enough. My parents, still trying to salvage the situation, begged Kim to get a job, to stop spending, to be realistic about her circumstances. But Kim refused. She was convinced, absolutely convinced, that she was on the brink of influencer fame. She refused to accept that her life was falling apart. And yet, despite all this, she still has not hit rock bottom. Or maybe she has, multiple times, but just refuses to acknowledge it. Either way, watching her downfall has been surreal. She went from being the girl who had everything she ever wanted to someone completely lost and flailing to stay afloat. So that is where things stand. Kim is back at home with my parents. Her finances are wrecked. Her husband is gone. Her friends have given up. Her influencer dreams, not happening. My parents are exhausted from trying to clean up her mess, and I am just trying to stay out of it. I have my own life to focus on, and I am not looking back. I just hope she figures it out before it is too late. Update 2. Hello, everyone. It has been about 3 months since my last update, and I figured it was time to check in and let you all know what has been happening with Kim and, by extension, the rest of us who are caught in the orbit of her personal drama. To say it has been a roller coaster would be an understatement. As you may remember, after the absolute disaster that was her wedding and the subsequent fallout, Kim lost Sean for good. He officially moved out a few months ago, and while I would love to say that life has calmed down since then, the truth is, it feels like we are all still trapped in some kind of low-budget reality television show, just without the cameras and production team. At first, Kim was in complete and utter denial about the breakup. I am talking full-on, pretending everything is fine levels of delusion. She continued posting pictures from the wedding on social media, as if everyone had collectively forgotten that Sean had walked out. She would caption them with things like "true love never dies" and "marriage is about fighting for each other no matter what." It was both embarrassing and deeply sad to watch. It was as if she truly believed that if she just acted like nothing had changed, then maybe reality itself would bend to her will and Sean would magically come back. Of course, reality does not work like that. Sean was gone. And once the weight of that truth started to settle in, Kim spiraled. She started bombarding him with messages, long, desperate paragraphs, late-night voice memos filled with sobbing, and promises that she would do absolutely anything to fix things. "I will change. I will be whatever you need me to be. Just tell me what to do," she would plead. Watching her degrade herself like that was difficult. It was like she could not see that the best thing she could do for herself was to let go. Instead, she clung to the idea that if she just proved her love, if she just tried hard enough, Sean would reconsider. One of the lowest moments came when she showed up at his apartment unannounced, eyes swollen from crying, mascara streaked down her face. She begged him to talk to her, to not give up on what they had. To his credit, Sean was gentle but firm. He did not yell. He did not mock her. He just calmly explained that their relationship had become toxic, that he had spent too long trying to make it work, and that he could not do it anymore. That was it. No long speeches, no dramatics, just the plain truth. And instead of hearing what he was actually saying, Kim twisted it in her head. She convinced herself that he was just confused, that if she could just show him how much she loved him, he would see that they belonged together. I will never forget the night she called me absolutely inconsolable, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "I cannot do this without him. I will die alone. Nobody will ever love me again." Her voice was raw, full of a kind of pain that was as heartbreaking as it was exhausting to deal with. I tried to reason with her, to tell her that her life was not over, that she needed to take a step back and focus on herself, but she did not want to hear it. She was drowning in her own heartbreak, and nothing I said was going to pull her out of it. Then, things took a turn. Sean started dating someone new, and just like that, it was as if a switch had been flipped. The sadness turned into pure, burning rage. Kim went from desperately begging for his love to full-scale social media warfare. She started posting cryptic, passive-aggressive rants about loyalty and people who pretend to be something they are not. She accused Sean of moving on way too fast, implying that he had definitely been cheating on her. Her posts became increasingly unhinged, with paragraphs about how real love is worth fighting for, and how some people just throw things away instead of working through the hard times. It was clear to everyone that she was not actually mad at him for moving on. She was mad because she was no longer the center of his world. And then came the most humiliating moment of all. Kim decided to throw a party. But this was not just any party. No, this was a carefully orchestrated event designed with one goal in mind: getting Sean back. She invited all of their mutual friends, making sure that the news would get back to him. She made sure everything was perfect. Drinks, music, decorations. Because in her mind, this was her chance to prove to him that they belonged together. But there was just one tiny problem. Sean did not show up. Not only did he not show up, but he made it very clear through a mutual friend that he had zero intention of coming. And instead of handling it with even a shred of dignity, Kim had a full-blown public meltdown. She started interrogating their friends, demanding to know why he had not come, who had told him not to, what she could have done differently. It was embarrassing. People tried to calm her down, but she was too far gone. She refused to accept the obvious. He was done. And then came the final blow. Sean officially filed for divorce. I do not even have the words to describe what it was like watching her break down when she realized it was real. No more hope, no more chances, no more waiting for him to change his mind. It was over. She completely shut down after that. She stopped answering calls, ignored texts, refused to see friends. Even our parents, who by the way were just trying to help, got pushed away. They begged her to talk to a therapist, and instead of seeing that as an act of love, she lashed out at them. "You do not understand what I am going through," she screamed at them. It was exhausting. We were exhausted. Eventually, after what felt like a never-ending battle, she agreed to see a therapist. But it was clear from the start that she was not really committed to the process. She went to a few sessions, said all the right things, but deep down, she was still clinging to the past. Instead of working on herself, she started posting old pictures of her and Sean again, writing captions about the good times and how love never really dies. It was pathetic. And now we are all just waiting to see what she does when the divorce is finalized. I wish I could say I am optimistic, but honestly, she is stuck, trapped in a reality that does not exist anymore. And it is not just sad, it is frustrating. Because while she is drowning in her own delusions, the rest of us are the ones who have to deal with the mess she leaves in her wake. I hope for her sake that she eventually snaps out of it. I hope she finally sees that the only way forward is to let go. But at this point, I am not holding my breath. Update 3. Hey everyone, it has been a few months since my last update, and somehow, against all odds, things with Kim have actually gotten worse. I did not think it was possible, but here we are. If you remember, she had been spiraling ever since Sean left and their marriage completely collapsed. At first, it was just self-destructive behavior, reckless spending, avoiding responsibilities, and throwing herself into chaos. But now, it has taken a more personal turn. A while back, Kim reached out to me, claiming she was in serious financial trouble. She said she had emergency bills piling up and was struggling to stay afloat. Despite my gut instinct screaming at me to say no, I caved. She is my sister. And even with everything that had happened, a part of me still hoped she would pull herself together if given the right support. So, I did what any hopeful yet incredibly naive sibling would do. I gave her money. And not just a small amount, but a substantial sum. Enough to cover what she said she needed and then some. I told myself this would be the push she needed to get back on track. I should have known better. Almost immediately, the money was gone. No rent paid, no overdue bills settled, just vanished into thin air. I have no idea what she actually spent it on, but based on past experiences, I would not be surprised if it was something completely unnecessary and impulsive. Maybe shopping, maybe nights out, maybe some ridiculous purchase she justified in the moment. When I confronted her about it, hoping for at least a shred of honesty or accountability, she completely lost it. She called me selfish, accused me of not understanding how hard things had been for her, and acted as if I was the villain for even questioning her. What started as a confrontation turned into a full-blown screaming match, and by the end of it, she blocked me on every platform and refused to answer any of my messages. At first, I was livid. But then, as the dust settled, I just felt drained. More than anything, I realized I had finally reached my limit. I had tried to help, and she had thrown it right back in my face. That was it. I was done being dragged into her chaos. A couple of weeks went by with radio silence, and honestly, I was relieved. No drama, no stress, just peace. And then, like clockwork, Kim reappeared. She was out of money and out of options. This time, she came with apologies, saying she had been in a dark place and just needed time to process everything. She even teared up, telling me she had nowhere else to go and asked if she could stay with me for a while. I said no. I told her, point blank, that I could not keep bailing her out unless she was willing to help herself. I explained that her constant cycle of bad decisions and reckless behavior needed to stop and that I was not going to let her take advantage of me any longer. She tried everything, tears, guilt-tripping, playing the victim, but I refused to budge. I was not going to let her drag me down with her. So, with nowhere else to turn, she went back to our parents. And for the first time in a long time, they had finally had enough. My parents, who had spent years enabling her, making excuses for her, and giving her chance after chance, finally hit their breaking point. They gave her an ultimatum, either get a job or get out of the house. I think they hoped that being forced to stand on her own 2 feet would make her wake up to the reality of her situation. Shockingly, Kim actually managed to find a job pretty quickly. Nothing glamorous, just a retail position at a local store. But still, it was something. You would think this would be a turning point, right? A wake-up call? Maybe even the beginning of her finally getting her life together? Nope, not even close. Instead of appreciating the opportunity, she has been doing nothing but complaining. The hours are terrible. The pay is insulting. Her coworkers are incompetent. Her boss is an idiot. Every conversation with her is just an endless rant about how unfair it is that she has to work such a demeaning job. She acts like she is above it all, like she should be handed something better simply because she exists. It is exhausting. I try to be understanding, I really do. I know starting over is hard, and I know that working retail can be brutal, but it is impossible to sympathize when she refuses to acknowledge how lucky she is to have a job at all, especially after everything she has done. What makes it worse is that she constantly tries to drag me into her misery. Can you believe how stupid my boss is? I should not have to deal with this. This is so beneath me. It is like she expects me to validate her complaints, but I just cannot do it. Not when I know how much she has taken for granted, not when she still refuses to take responsibility for the mess she made. To top it all off, she is still living in the past, constantly comparing her current situation to the lifestyle she had before. She talks about how much she misses the nice restaurants, the vacations, the luxury shopping sprees, as if she was some kind of fallen aristocrat. It is frustrating beyond words because she still does not seem to grasp that she brought this all on herself. My parents are trying to stay supportive, but I can see the toll it is taking on them. They remind her that this job is just a stepping stone, that everyone has to start somewhere, that she needs to be patient and put in the effort if she wants something better. But she just rolls her eyes and ignores them, acting like the entire world has conspired to make her life miserable. Some things never change. So, here we are. Kim has a job, but she is making it painfully clear that she thinks she is above it. She refuses to take accountability, refuses to appreciate what she has, and refuses to stop making everything about herself. As for me, I am staying as far away from the drama as I can. I have done my part, and I am not getting sucked back in. I will keep you all posted if anything changes, but for now, it looks like we are all just stuck in this cycle, waiting to see if she ever figures it out. Update 4. Hey everyone! It has been a while since my last update about my sister Kim, and honestly, I was not sure if I would even have anything new to share. But life has a way of surprising you, and things have taken some unexpected turns. Some good, some frustrating, and some that I am still trying to process. When Kim first got her job, I had hoped it would be a fresh start for her, a wake-up call that would help her build a sense of responsibility. But every conversation we had felt like I was being dragged into a never-ending pity party. She would go on and on about how unfair her boss was, how incompetent her coworkers were, and how she was simply too good for the kind of work she was doing. At first, I tried to be patient. I reminded her that everyone has to start somewhere, that no one walks into a perfect job right away, and that learning to work with difficult people is just part of being an adult. But she was not having any of it. Every attempt to encourage her was met with an eye roll, a scoff, or another long rant about how no one truly understood her struggles. Our parents, who had been bending over backward to support her, were getting tired too. They kept reminding her that this was just a stepping stone, a way to gain experience and work towards something better. But Kim refused to see it that way. She acted like the entire world was against her. And no matter how much anyone tried to help, she was determined to see herself as the victim. It was exhausting, and I will not lie, I was starting to feel completely drained. Then, after a particularly rough week, I snapped. I told her flat out that she needed to stop fixating on the negatives and start appreciating what she had, that she was lucky to have a job, lucky to have parents who were willing to support her, and that if she wanted things to change, she actually had to put in the effort. That conversation did not go well. She got angry, accused me of being unsympathetic, and made it clear that she was not interested in my tough love approach. So I took a step back. I stopped reaching out. I let her figure things out on her own. For weeks, I heard nothing from her. And honestly, I was relieved. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No more constant negativity, no more walking on eggshells around her. But at the same time, I could not shake the worry. She was still living at home, still struggling, and our parents were starting to feel completely overwhelmed. I knew that at some point something had to give. Either she would decide to change, or she would keep spiraling. Then out of nowhere, I got a text from Kim. Hey, can we talk? I braced myself for another round of complaints or excuses, but when I called her, I was completely caught off guard. She sounded different, happy, excited even. She told me things were finally starting to look up. At first, I was skeptical. I half expected her to follow up with some ridiculous scheme or another reason why she was still miserable. But as she kept talking, I realized she was being genuine. She was actually doing well. She did not mention Sean even once, her on-again, off-again disaster of an ex. She did not complain about work. Instead, she was talking about how much she was enjoying it. She told me her manager had pulled her aside that week and complimented her on her customer service skills. Apparently, she had helped a customer find exactly what they needed, and it made her realize that she actually liked helping people. The excitement in her voice was undeniable, and I could not help but feel a little stunned. This was the same person who had spent months complaining about how beneath her this job was. It did not stop there. Kim started volunteering for extra shifts. She made friends with her coworkers, the same ones she used to call lazy and annoying. She even started taking our parents' advice seriously, something I never thought I would see happen in my lifetime. They encouraged her to start saving money, and for once, she actually listened. She talked about wanting to move out, about regaining her independence. It was like something had finally clicked. And then one day, she told me she had saved enough money to get her own apartment. I was shocked, excited, and more than anything, I was proud of her. When she thanked me for being patient with her, I almost did not know how to respond. After everything we had been through, it felt surreal to hear her acknowledge how difficult she had been. But she did, and it meant a lot. Now Kim is gradually moving into her new place. She is still working hard, still making an effort, and still proving to herself and to the rest of us that she is capable of standing on her own. Of course, she is not perfect. She has her moments of doubt and frustration like everyone else, but now, instead of falling into self-pity, she handles it. She figures it out. The other day, she called me, not to complain, but to tell me how excited she was about a new project at work. If you had told me a year ago that this would be the same Kim who once threw tantrums about her unfair job, I would not have believed you. She used to be so obsessed with chasing some fantasy of a lavish lifestyle, spending our parents' money without a second thought. Now, she is taking charge of her own life. She is proving to herself that she does not need to rely on anyone else to make things happen. And honestly, I would be lying if I said I was not proud of her. She is my older sister. When I was a kid, I always wanted to look up to her. And maybe now, for the first time in a long time, I finally can.